Hello and thank you for contacting Wave Support. I'd also like to welcome you to the family of Wave contact lens designers, and I think you'll find that the Wave has a lot of great, unique tools that we can use to design contact lenses, but what does come with that is kind of a high or kind of a steep learning curve, and so hopefully I can provide you some helpful tips. Just a couple of comments as far as ordering lenses. Unfortunately, from the Wave design side, we're not able to directly reorder a lens for you. When you order a lens with Wave, it comes directly out of your software and goes right into the lab, the lathe, the lab. So therefore, any design changes have to be done in your software. So we can provide us some helpful tips and show you, walk you through a couple changes that we might recommend, so that way you can go back to your design, implement some of those changes, and then order them directly yourself from the lab. So with that said, let's take a look at a couple of your designs here. This first set that you sent us, I understand you sent us a few cases. This first one, I noticed that it looks like you may have designed both the right and the left lens based on right lens topographies. If you look at the case that or the information that you sent over, it looks like you've got two right-eye topographies, and it looks like from your image captures that you may have not been able to get a left-eye topography out of that. And that's not uncommon. Sometimes that happens, especially early on when we're getting these topographies. But it sounds like that left one might actually be fitting fairly well for you. I also look at these designs and looking at your refractions that you enter, they kind of go along with your clinical request of the right eye and the left eye. So if we look first at this right eye here for a moment, the designs actually look very nice for a small, kind of a mini-scleral design. These actually look really nice. You're going to notice some areas that aren't quite perfect in here, and that's more of a function of this rather displaced ridge here in the cornea. But I wasn't quite able to tell from your clinical request if the right lens was fitting well enough. It sounds like the left eye was doing well, but if the right lens is fitting well enough, then I might be inclined to just say, make the adjustments for the powers and go from there. Now, if you need to readjust this right one because you've got this kind of displaced or a little asymmetric cornea, you might almost have to do the design in a freeform design. If you remember from your Wave training, an R-sim design is more of a spherical design, a G-sim is more or less a bitoric design, and a freeform, of course, will let you look at all the different meridians. So because this is so asymmetric, this cornea, you may be able to get a little bit nicer fitting lens on this right eye if you went with a freeform design. So I did mock up a little bit of a design here, and I take it you saw the Wave training video that has the 8-step approach for fitting these mini-scleral lenses. If not, I'll also attach that in the email that I send over with this. But I went back through and took your same basic design and just switched it over to a freeform modality. And I just went around and redesigned the lens just to see if we can get a little bit lining up a little better in those different meridians. One thing to keep in mind if you do go to freeform, when you make any adjustments, because it looks at each meridian separately, if you're making adjustments on the lens, you can't rely on the 50% mode. You have to actually go to 25% and make any changes in each meridian all the way around. Just kind of just a thought to keep in mind when you're in freeform. As far as powers go, if we look at your lens, I'll go back to your original lens. I think you had an overfraction of about a diopter and a half or so. And if you recall where you add that in, you go over here to the overfraction, and you add it in right here. Now, one thing to keep in mind, just like any multifocal lens, anytime you give more distance in that lens, you're probably going to lose some of the reading. So I always try to go with as little minus as you can get away with. I try to keep them as much plus as you can keep in that lens, or as little minus as possible. But here's where you would add that overfraction in. And then you would hit continue to add that into the power in. And then you also mentioned on the add. Now, if you remember, you look at this top one for the add. Based on the two lenses that you sent over, the right and the left, I'm assuming the right eye is the more dominant eye because the pupil size is a little bit bigger on this lens. And one of the things you'll find in these mini-scleral lenses, they really don't move very much. So sometimes it's hard to get into that reading portion in a distance center lens. Sometimes you almost have to go to a near center, almost like a Air Optics multifocal soft lens. But in this case, if you're getting okay vision, what you could do is increase the add a little bit right here. Usually I go a little bit more than the normal add, maybe half to 3/4, even more sometimes. Maybe bump this up to closer to 275 or 3. And then maybe even move this in a little bit smaller distance zone, increase that bifocal size a little bit more, and at least that will get that a little better fighting chance of getting that lens. Same kind of rules apply for multifocal wave lenses versus the spherical. Sometimes you have to maximize the plus in the non-dominant eye, and even consider going to a near center in one and a distance center in the other one. And I will say there is a bit of a steep learning curve on the multifocal lenses, so take it slow and take it easy, and work on some of the fitting characteristics first. If we look at the left eye, now from my understanding is that the left one is actually fitting well, even though it was designed off a right topography. And that's okay. My guess is you might have a little more symmetric cornea on that left eye. I haven't seen the topography, but that might be the case in this situation. But if the fit is fine, that's okay. I've actually done that before myself. It doesn't cause any harm. You can just enter the needed over refraction over here. Again, keep in mind to keep as much plus as you can get away with in that lens, or as little minus. Another tool you'll find helpful when you're fitting these lenses, usually what I try to do, especially if it's a new rigid lens wearer, when they're in, I also take a known spherical lens that I have in my fitting set and place that on the eye and just get an over refraction over that. And then there's a little tool under here, if you haven't found it yet, it's called Tools. Let me move this up a little higher so you can see it. Tools, Trial Lens Data, and you can enter that known lens quantity here, right here, base curve and power, and add in your over refraction over that lens and hit continue, and that will actually adjust the overall power of wave to adjust for any discrepancies you may have had here in the refraction versus the topography. In most cases with most rather symmetrical corneas, if you nail the refraction and have a great topography, they come out pretty much right on the money. But I always like to use that, especially if I'm a little concerned that I might not be hitting the mark on the refraction. I'll always put a known spherical lens on the eye and use the trial lens data information. That's a great way to get those lenses closer to the final product. So with that said, I think you're pretty close on these designs. Actually sounds nice. I would adjust again, just to summarize, I would put the spherical over refractions in and adjust for that. Assuming the fit is acceptable physiologically, I don't think I would change a whole lot with that, and then go from there. Well, I wish you well with this case and your upcoming cases, and thank you for contacting Wave Support. Have a great day.